Jay, and thank you all for being here. I'll try to keep this brief. We kind of run over here a bit, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I too will be making a few forward-looking statements. This is a company that has just done its listing in September. About the 3rd we started trading. We raised $8.7 million at 30 cents to acquire a key asset that we had already organized a transaction on. It's a very, very exciting property in Mexico. We've made a couple of the payments there. We have one more payment to go from Vista Gold. The geology is very, very exciting. It's an epithermal. It's a big system that's compressed in about a 3-kilometer diameter area, and within that there's about 17 kilometers of vertically striking and outcropping vein systems. High-grade oxide gold, good strip ratios because it's all on sort of outcropping ridges, siliceous ridges held up by these structures. And so when you incise pit, they sort of daylight out on the sides and they can go in rather nicely. We currently have a 380,000 ounce resource indicated and 155,000 inferred. These are very nice grades, about 1.8 grams per ton. This also has a 18-to-1 silver ratio, so there's about 10 million ounces of silver as well. This has significant upside value in terms of its exploration potential. We've only been working about 40% of that 17 kilometers I talked about, and we're only in about 180 meters into the from the surface down. And so there's a lot of down dip exposure for growth, as well as working the rest of the structure. The development costs in the area are going to be quite attractive. We're in an area just outside of Motzl on a 2-hour drive north, and then we get to Coastal, it's another hour to the site. There's a line power to the site, there's water, there's a village with local immediate labor support, and then in Coastal and elsewhere there's a strong workforce. It's a good mining country, lots of mine support and development around us, and in the scheme of things, things have been moving very quickly for us. We met with the local Hito on the land transaction on September 5th, and 2 days later we had an agreement with them because they're very supportive and they want to see development in the area. We've got a strong management team and a shareholder base. Our incentives as managers is the same as you as shareholders. We're all aligned. There's no cheap stock in this deal. It's all about 30 cents level, and we are in a situation where we're working for no wages. We are paying some technical people, etc., but we're basically in this for the same reason that you would be. We acquired this asset for $6 million. We've already paid $4.5 million. We have $1.5 million to go, and that's US dollars. That's not due until late 2021. You can see from this that we are in this strong gold-silver belt in Mexico. There's a lot of activity around us, names you'd recognize. This is a large land package. We've done some work on it, but we're now focused on a 2 production scenario. We're going to initiate some permitting next month and move this thing and continue to just de-risk it further and further. But right now what we've been doing is working on a new resource statement, and that's because this work came out of the current resource, came out of drilling almost 500 holes in the 90s. Some work since then. A resource PFS level study was done in the late 90s by Pincock, Allen, and Holt, and then in 2013 by Vista. And so we've taken all of that data. We've included 46 new drill holes that weren't included in the resource model before, and we've also done something that's never been done there before. Since this has old historic Spanish colonial era mining as well as up to the 1920s and 30s, there's some underground works in there. There's these ridges that do this. So a lot of the drilling targeted that underground work, which was sensible. They put their resource together here. But when we go up and look on top, this is all exposed and outcropping, same stuff, beautiful stuff. So we've been starting a trenching program, and it's almost backwards because we're using the trenching to connect it to the drilling, and we'll be increasing the resource as a result of that, with really good results coming out of the trenching. So you can watch this company do news releases on trenching, and then in about 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have a resource statement. We're pretty excited that this resource statement will significantly improve the size of this thing, and it's just beginning. This stuff outcrops in both road cuts as well as at the surface. So we have a 36-man crew right now doing this trench work. It's a 5,000 meter program that we intend to expand to 10. And no soils involved in this. We go all the way down to hard rock and then start a pretty deep chip channel to effectively collect a horizontal drill hole. We're able to take that and drape it onto the topography, the digital topography, and then use that for our modeling. So the resource modeling work is underway by Stantec. We've announced that, and we'll continue to announce trench work as we go forward. You can see that this is a relatively high-grade resource for a open pit heap leach mine. It has metallurgical test work, good metallurgical results. If you crush modestly and heap it, you can get to the mid to high 70s on gold and a lot less on silver, about 25–30%. If you grind it down and you do a vat leach, you can get in the high 90s and high 80s respectively on gold and silver. What's interesting is this image here. The known mapping in the past, the historic mapping, was this is a very densely covered area, so we have to cut down some of the growth and everything and re-expose these roads. And when you do that, you get a very good look at the outcrops. So we laid these initial trenches in there. They're shown there, and they tend to extend outside of the mapped area. So we're seeing an enlargement of the mineralized zone from our trench work as well. There's never been any trench work here at all done at this property. So we've been successful in pulling together and de-risking this thing at a rather rapid clip. We've got a very senior team. I've been in that part of the world, in the Sinaloa area in particular, for over 17 years with another company. We've raised some capital to get this thing going. We still have a very solid budget. We're working on a permitting plan now. We understand permitting. I'm also on board of another company in Mexico and understand that process very well. So we can parallel track the permitting with our planning and our resource work, and then kind of arrive at the two things together. Our timeline, so we have laid this out about 8 or so months ago, moved this thing forward. We're pretty well on track, a little bit behind on the announcement of the resource work, but that's because of positive things we found in the data sets, these extensions of those trenches and so on. We want to get all that data captured in there before we finalize the resource. What's interesting too is this area here. This is a little bit of an eye test, but when you look at the stars on those on the lower map there, that's where some of the current drilling occurred from the past. And then you can see there's a bold highlighted area in the lower map that's enlarged in the upper map. That's the Las Primas zone. We're pretty excited about that because that's some of the chip work we've done on looking at the outcropping areas. But that's an area where there was no historic underground mining at all. The other areas where there are stars, there were old historic underground mining. That mining stopped in about late 1920s. And so we're intrigued to see if we might, in the Las Primas zone, actually have intact one of the old original mineralized systems that the Spaniards might have been interested if this was closer to the river. We do have some engineering going on, designing for about a 20 million ton leach pad right now, getting some roads in there and sizing some pits. This is just part of the design plans, and the rest of the pits would be off the map here a little bit. Kind of an image here of a photograph of where the heap leach will be. The pad will be here in the foreground, and those ridge in the background is where the mining occurs. You can see where the old-timers would have driven in at the lowest elevation, started mining off of an adit in there, drifting and scram raising. And we have all the old original plan maps and so on, or not all of them, we have a lot of them. We think we have enough. We've digitized it. We've been able to model that underground work and subtract it from the resource and really get an understanding of some of the multi-100-gram grades per ton gold that they were mining. But the ridge tops also will include the exposures, the outcrops of these veins, and so that's where we're doing our work to get some of this channel sampling, or rather called trenching work done. And as I say, it's almost backwards because it's already been drilled out at depth, and now our job is to get it connected to the surface. We'll spin some pits in there. We'll do the whittle pitting. So we'll have a global resource statement and then the mineable resources. It's a great country to work in, very easy access, good labor in the area. We've got a strong team. Greg Liller's been involved in project in Mexico for dozens of years, and was part of some discovery teams at Ocampo, for example. Understands these systems quite well, particularly the strongly juiced up epithermal systems like this. They can be quite deep. They can go 800 to a kilometer deep in terms of being an oxide system, because there's just been a lot of epithermal activity over millions and millions of years all in place there. So that's a real positive for us. We found that the drill holes in the past, they've drilled them at angles, of course, and in some cases they drilled right through the footwall and then said, well, there's no mineralization below this level, but they were actually out into the wall. So when we really got all this in 3D, we're only down about 180 meters off of the surface. So there's plenty of growth potential in terms of resource size at depth, as well as this 60 to 70% of the area in that cluster that has not been explored. So our timeline is move this thing to production. We're kind of running into some good problems, if you will, because our resource expectation is just going to get larger than the 500,000 ounce or so you saw in the historic work. So that's giving us a pause on to reconsider some of the factors here. We were talking about contract mining and contract crushing. We'll still consider contract mining, but now we're considering crushing ourselves, given the fact that the size is potentially going up, and there's these pockets of high grade that are going to need something that I did at the Castle Mountain mine back when it was operating and I was part owner and contract miner. We would mine and heap leach through normal crushing, but every time we got a bench of high grade of about higher than, say, 2 to 3 grams, and it ran up above that, that material would go in a special pile. It would be batched through the crusher and then go into a ball mill. We'd mill it, we'd spin it through some sort of gravity circuit. The tails would be agglomerated and go back out to the heap leach. And that was a very nice way to enhance recovery and pick up that high grade. Other guys, it just gets lost on a heap leach pad. There's just not enough time for the cyanide to dissolve it all before you cover it up with another whack of ore. So we're looking at all of that. These are some of the resource statements. I guess I would say stay tuned, because these will all be replaced here shortly in the next several weeks. And we do have a couple of ways that we're going to grow our current value of about 25 million market cap. We'll do that by the value per ounce in the ground applied to a larger number of ounces, and secondly, the value applied to engineered and resource style ounces, which are often enhanced in value on their own. So we have a tight capital structure, 59 million shares. We're trading real high volumes. We're up at about 42 cents yesterday, and we've got a very supportive group of shareholders. Thank you.
All right, if you